I'm going to try my best not to go on a million tangents in this video. Before we get into today's video, I just want to let you guys know that this video is for educational purposes only. Please remember to be kind to everybody everywhere, in your everyday life, in your home, in the grocery store, and especially in the comment section down below. Please do not show hate to anybody, anywhere. So good morning, good morning, good morning. How is everybody doing today? I hope you all are having an amazing day. I hope everybody's had a wonderful week. Hope everybody is doing great. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about Matthew Perry from Friends. And I know that over the past years, there has been a lot of chatter, and I've been following it, just kind of paying attention, and it just being like a flashback of so many other famous people that we have seen. Some of us have followed, the infamous Michael Jackson and all of that. But since the new information has come out, I feel like it's worth really talking about at this point. Before we go any further, I did want to stop and thank today's sponsor, MeUndies. MeUndies is so well known. I mean, the word is everywhere for making some of the most comfortable, soft, and breathable underwear that everyone can enjoy. MeUndies has over 10 different styles, ranging from everything from cute little boy shorts to thongs and even to lace options that are actually very comfortable, and I have some myself. These cuts come in over 100 different colors and prints, ranging from black to bananas. I recently added a MeUndies bralette to my collection, and let me tell you, the bralettes do not disappoint. They are made from the same micromodal fabric that the underwear are made from, and it is literally like having a second skin on your body. But it's also stretchy and it's soft and very comfortable. And not to mention, you can get your MeUndies tops to match your bottoms. And I don't care what anybody says, when the tops match the bottoms, it just makes you feel a little extra cute. There's just something that goes on inside that you're like, oh, it's cute. And if you're looking for something that's like even more breathable and more summer proof, then check out MeUndies Move Me line, because their Breathe fabric, which has moisture wicking and anti-odor technology, is perfect for working out or just keeping you a little extra cool on those sweltering days. And if you're not happy with your first pair of MeUndies, no worries, because they have a problem-free philosophy, and so it is on MeUndies. If you want to try MeUndies, well, now is your chance, because you can get 20% off of your first order plus free shipping at MeUndies.com/Christina Randall. Yes, just go to MeUndies.com/Christina Randall and you can save today. Thanks again, MeUndies. Let's talk about Matthew Perry, and I kind of want to start at the beginning, and then we're going to go through what we know so far. Disclaimer, everything in this video is alleged. I have pulled all of my information from very public sources that is already out there. Please go do your own research and form your own opinion. So, okay. Matthew Perry was born on August 19th in 1969 in Williamstown, Massachusetts, to his parents, Susan and John. Matthew's mother, Suzanne, is a Canadian journalist who was once the press secretary to the Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. Matthew's father, John, is an American actor and a former model. Now, Matthew's parents separated when he was just 1 year old, and his mother would go on to marry a Canadian broadcaster journalist named Keith. Matthew was mostly raised by his mother in Ottawa, Canada, but he also briefly lived in Toronto and Montreal. Growing up, Matthew went to a boarding school with his half-sister from his father's side, Maria. And I'll be honest, I've always wondered about those boarding schools because they're still around to this day. So if you have any opinions or experience, let me know down in the comments section. At around 10 years old, Matthew began to struggle. He said that he felt like an outsider when his mother started building a family with her new husband. So while Matthew was struggling, he was doing little things like taking money from his mother, he was smoking, he was letting his grades fall, pretty much rebelling. I mean, he even got into a fight with a classmate. Now get this, and this is just so weird, so full circle and kind of suspicious, but this classmate that he got into this altercation with just so happened to be Justin Trudeau, the future, at the time, Canadian prime minister. Matthew has said that he started drinking when he was just 14, and by the time that he was 18, he was drinking every single day. Matthew was, however, thriving at playing tennis. He said that he was playing for at least 10 hours a day, and he became a top-ranked junior player in Canada, and he had the possibility of a professional tennis career. But this dream faded when he moved from Canada to Los Angeles to live with his father when he was just 15 years old. The competition there in LA was much tougher than it was back home. So this is when Matthew kind of switched lanes, and he went from his dream at playing tennis to deciding that he was going to start studying acting at the Buckley School, which is a college prep school in LA. Now, while he was studying, Matthew took improv comedy classes. He would go on to graduate from there in 1987. Matthew had appeared in some small parts before his graduation, though. His first credited role was a small part in 240 Robert back in 1979. But as soon as Matthew moved to LA, he started auditioning for bigger roles. He wanted to make it big. He wanted to be a star. And throughout the 80s, Matthew made guest appearances in quite a few shows, most notably Growing Pains. He did this part in Growing Pains in 1989, and some of y'all are going, ding, 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 ding. I remember that show, and some of y'all are going, I have no idea what show that is. Depending on your thought process, tells me probably your age range, because Growing Pains was so big back then. He also made his film debut just before that in a movie called A Night in the Life of Jimmy Reardon. Then in 1990, Matthew was cast as a regular on the 1990 CBS sitcom Sydney. He played the younger brother in this show, but it wasn't until 1993 when Matthew was just 24 years old. He was taking these little roles, and he had no idea that he was about to make it big, that his dreams of being this star was actually going to come true. Matthew was actually committed to a sitcom called Lax 2194 that initially made him unavailable for a role in another pilot, 6 of 1. Now, 6 of 1 would later be known as the infamous show Friends. But then the Lax 2194 show fell through, so Matthew was finally able to audition for this part in 6 of 1, and he was eventually cast as Chandler Bing. He was the youngest member of the main cast, and as you probably know, the show Friends became a huge success. By 2002, each of the main cast members were making $1 million per episode. I need for everybody to stop and hear that again. In 2002, the cast members were making $1 million per episode. Holy cow. The show earned Matthew an Emmy nomination in 2002 as well. And of course, with the international fame that Matthew was gaining, it came with a microscope that was always on him. Fans began to worry about Matthew when they noticed that he looked different in later seasons of Friends. Matthew would go on to address why that was. Now, according to Matthew, like I said earlier, he had become an alcoholic by the age of 18. And so then in 1997, after a jet ski accident, Matthew said that he became addicted to a pill called Vicodin. He actually ended up going to rehab, and he completed a 28-day program. But then in May of 2000, Matthew was admitted to the hospital with an alcohol-induced pancreatitis. Then in 2002, Matthew said that he initially really tried not to drink on the set of Friends, but that he would arrive in the morning with extreme hangovers, and that made him shake and sweat while he was literally filming. He said that during later seasons of the series, he was frequently either high or had been drinking on the set. And apparently, his castmates even tried to help him by staging an intervention. It was unsuccessful. He looked physically different, and everybody could tell. In 2001, Matthew even paused his work so he could go enter an inpatient rehab facility for 2 months. And he said at this point, he was really struggling with the Vicodin and methadone and and even alcohol. He even would later say that those struggles made it to the point that he had like no memory of the first 3 years working on the set of Friends, which is kind of scary to think about. Like that whole first 3 seasons, he didn't even have any memory of. Now, as the years would go on, he continued to struggle, but he also continued to have a successful career, which had to be hard. So he's struggling with this, he's going through all of this, but his career is continuing to climb at the same time. He was nominated for many awards and he even won some of them. Then in 2018, Matthew would go into the hospital and spend 5 months there for a stomach perforation. During his stay, Matthew literally almost lost his life after his colon burst from opioid abuse. He spent 2 weeks in a coma and he had to use a colostomy bag because of it. And I know that I'm not saying that word completely correctly. I try, you guys. He ended up having to have this bag for 9 months. His family was told that he only had a 2% chance of surviving. And then 2 years later, while Matthew was in a rehab in Switzerland, he says that he faked pain just so he could get a prescription for 1,800 milligrams of pain medication per day. And on top of all of that, he was having ketamine infusions. Now, if you don't know what ketamine is a general anesthetic whose medical risks require a healthcare professional to literally monitor the patient after they have received the medication to make sure that there are no complications. I mean, it is a very, very serious medication. He was also given propofol during a surgery, which actually stopped his heart for 5 minutes. Now, propofol is the same medication that contributed to Michael Jackson's passing. CPR was given that broke 8 of Matthew's ribs, and Matthew then said that he spent $175,000 for a private jet to take him to LA to get more medication. I mean, can you imagine? This is no way for any person to live. But then, when the doctors refused to give him this medication, he spent another $175,000 to fly back to Switzerland to hopefully continue what he was doing there. In 2022, Matthew said that he estimated that he had spent $9 million on his addiction, which included 14 stomach surgeries, 15 stays in rehab, therapy twice a week for 30 years, and time spent in 6,000 AA meetings. I mean, the investment that Matthew had put in with time and money, and I cannot even imagine the mental stress and games and thoughts of, hey, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I make this flight? Who can get me this? Over the years is just, it sounds like a living nightmare, truly living in a rich nightmare. That brings us to October 28th of last year, 2023, when 54-year-old Matthew Perry was found unresponsive in a hot tub at his home in LA. He was pronounced deceased at 4:17 p.m. that day. On November 3rd, Matthew's funeral was held where his father, his mother, his stepfather, and his 5 friends, co-stars, attended. On December 15th, it was announced that Matthew's passing was due to acute effects of ketamine. It was said other circumstances that contributed to his passing were things like the effects of opioids, as well as drowning and coronary artery disease. The medical examiner said in a statement that at high levels of ketamine found in his blood, the main lethal effects would be from both cardiovascular overstimulation and respiratory depression, while drowning contributes due to the likelihood of submersion into the pool as he lapsed into unconsciousness. Coronary artery disease contributes due to the exacerbation of ketamine-induced effects on the heart. Now, Matthew had been getting K-assisted psychotherapy sessions to treat anxiety at the time of his passing. His last known session was a week prior to him being found. However, the report stated that the K in his system at his passing could not be from that infusion therapy, meaning, like we talked about earlier, these types of medications or therapies are supposed to be monitored. Now, I'm not going to get into the right or wrong because that is actually like a doctor monitoring this type of treatment. But what they found was the amount that was in his system wasn't from that treatment. And since this K's half-life is 3 to 4 hours or less, there's no way what was in his system could have been from where he was being monitored professionally by a doctor. Now, recently, in May of this year of 2024, an investigation was opened by the LA Police Department to determine just how Matthew got this extremely high dose of K that caused his passing. On August 15th, law enforcement announced that indictments and charges were filed against 5 people. Now, Matthew's personal assistant was one of them, 2 other doctors, and 2 dealers.
Mr. Perry's death in October of last year, law enforcement, my office, and our partners represented on this stage began an in-depth, wide-ranging investigation. That investigation has revealed a broad, underground criminal network responsible for distributing large quantities of ketamine to Mr. Perry and others. This network included a live-in assistant, various go-betweens, 2 medical doctors, and a major source of drug supply known as, quote, the Ketamine Queen. We charged 5 defendants in this matter. These defendants took advantage of Mr. Perry's addiction issues to enrich themselves. They knew what they were doing was wrong. They knew what they were doing was risking great danger to Mr. Perry, but they did it anyways. In the end, these defendants were more interested in profiting off Mr. Perry than caring for his well-being. I'm going to talk about the indictment, the allegations, and the charges in more detail. On October 28, 2023, Mr. Perry was found deceased in his home. An autopsy was conducted following his death. That autopsy showed that he had died due to the acute effects of ketamine. This investigation focused on who supplied the ketamine to Mr. Perry. As many of you know, Mr. Perry struggled with addiction in the past. And on many occasions, he sought help for his addiction issues. The investigation revealed that in the fall of 2023, Mr. Perry fell back into addiction, and these defendants took advantage to profit for themselves. The 2 lead defendants in this case are defendants Salvador Plasencia and defendant Jasveen Sangha. First, I'll talk about defendant Plasencia. Defendant Plasencia was a medical doctor. He worked with another medical doctor, defendant Mark Chavez, to obtain ketamine. He then worked with Mr. Perry's live-in assistant, defendant Kenneth Iwamasa, to distribute that ketamine to Mr. Perry. Over 2 months, from September to October 2023, they distributed approximately 20 vials of ketamine to Mr. Perry in exchange for $55,000 in cash. Defendant Plasencia saw this as an opportunity to profit off of Mr. Perry. He wrote in a text message in September 2023, quote, "I wonder how much this moron will pay." He also stated in text messages that he wanted to be Mr. Perry's sole source of supply. As a doctor, defendant Plasencia knew full well the danger of what he was doing. In fact, on one occasion, he injected Mr. Perry with ketamine, and he saw Mr. Perry freeze up and his blood pressure spike. Despite that, he left additional vials of ketamine for defendant Iwamasa to administer to Mr. Perry. Of course, defendant Iwamasa had no medical training to speak of. Defendant Placentia knew what he was doing was harming Mr. Perry. He had spoken to another patient in mid-October 2023, and he told that patient that Mr. Perry was spiraling out of control with his addiction. Nonetheless, Defendant Placentia continued to offer ketamine to Mr. Perry. Likewise, Defendant Sangha knew what she was doing was harming defendants and also Mr. Perry. She took advantage of Mr. Perry by selling large amounts of ketamine to Mr. Perry over a 2-week period in October of 2023. She sold approximately 50 vials of ketamine for approximately $11,000 in cash. She worked with a broker, Defendant Erik Fleming, and also the live-in assistant, Defendant Iwamasa, to distribute this ketamine. Sangha and the broker, Defendant Fleming, saw this as an opportunity to profit off of Mr. Perry. In a text message, the broker wrote, quote, "I wouldn't do it if there wasn't a chance of me making some money for doing this." Defendant Sangha sold the batch of ketamine that resulted in Mr. Perry's death on October 28th. Officers later searched Defendant Sangha's home. During that search, they found what amounted to a drug-selling emporium. They found 80 vials of ketamine, thousands of pills containing methamphetamine, cocaine, bottles of Xanax and other illegally obtained prescription drugs, and drug-selling paraphernalia, including scales and ledgers. As I mentioned, the defendants in this case knew what they were doing was wrong. When they'd refer to the ketamine, they used coded language. They'd refer to it using terms such as, quote, Dr. Pepper, or quote, bots, or quote, cans. Also, defendants Placentia and Chavez, as medical doctors, knew full well this was not the proper way to administer ketamine, and they even talked about that in their exchanges. Sangha had sold ketamine to another customer. That person died the same day, and a family member of that person sent a message to Defendant Sangha telling her the cause of death was ketamine. Nonetheless, Defendant Sangha continued selling drugs, including ketamine, including the ketamine that ultimately killed Mr. Perry. That other victim was a person named Cody McLaury. He died in 2019. As a result of this investigation, we have filed a drug distribution charge related to the death of Mr. McLaury. After Mr. Perry died, these defendants tried to cover up what they had done. On October 28th, after reading news reports of Mr. Perry's death, Defendant Sangha wrote a text message to Defendant Fleming saying, quote, delete all our messages. Likewise, after Mr. Perry's death, Defendant Placentia falsified medical records and notes to try to make it look like what he was doing was legitimate. It was not. We have filed numerous federal charges against the 5 defendants. The penalties these defendants face are very significant. With regard to Defendant Placentia, the statutory maximum sentence he faces is 120 years in federal prison. And with regard to Defendant Sangha, the statutory maximum she faces is life imprisonment.
So now Kenneth has got a plea agreement, which is why he went ahead and pled guilty, the assistant. And so, of course, the assistant is telling everything. And so now all this information is coming out, and he's probably going to have to testify against anybody else that tries to take it to trial. It says that Kenneth has been injecting Matthew with this K in the days leading up to his passing at least 6 to 8 times per day, and that he found Matthew unconscious at his house on at least 2 different occasions in just the month of October alone. Now, the plea agreement goes on to say that on the day of Matthew's passing, Kenneth allegedly injected Matthew with a shot of K at 8:30 a.m. and then again at 12:45 p.m. while Matthew was watching a movie. Then, about 40 minutes after, Matthew asked Kenneth to get the hot tub going and to shoot me up with a big one. Kenneth allegedly injected Matthew with more K in or near while he was around the hot tub, and this makes 3 injections in a 5-hour period. The plea agreement then says that Kenneth left the home to run errands, which left Matthew unattended in the hot tub, and when Kenneth came back to the house, this is when he found Matthew face down in the hot tub. Matthew's last photo that he posted on his Instagram was taken literally just before he passed away in the hot tub. After Matthew's passing, the National Philanthropy Trust established the Matthew Perry Foundation to support people struggling with addictions. So what do I think? I think this is something that people struggle with every single day. A lot of people don't have the resources that Matthew and other people in that position have, and sometimes it can be to your detriment, like in this situation. I think that the justice system is right to arrest all of the people involved and hold them accountable. And I'm glad that they're making an example out of them, because doctors should be afraid of doing this type of thing. I cannot believe that his assistant, I understand, assistants doing everything they can for the person that they work for, but holy cow, that is to the extreme. When you talk about ride or die, it sounds like that's exactly what Kenneth was, and to his detriment and to Matthew's detriment. But I have a feeling that Matthew was going to find somebody to do what he wanted anyways. If he would, fly for $175,000 from Switzerland to LA just to try to get some stuff, he was going to do what he was going to do regardless. When I was growing up, kids or people thinking about being famous like that or being on these shows was just like the stars in your eyes. But so many people get lost in that lifestyle, and no amount of money can bring them back out. And it's really sad. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Other than that, I love you guys. What do y'all think? And I will see y'all in the next video. Love you guys. Bye.